Caleb Turner stood in the middle of what used to be his farm and tried to remember how green it once looked. The ground beneath his boots was black and hard, burned until nothing wanted to grow again. The wind carried the smell of old smoke, even though the fire had happened months ago. Broken fence posts leaned like tired men. The barn was gone. The farmhouse was worse than gone. Only its stone steps remained, leading to nothing. Caleb had one arm. His right arm hung strong at his side, rough with scars and work. His left arm ended at the shoulder, lost years ago in a mining accident on a distant moon. The company had called it an unfortunate event. They paid him once, then erased his name from their system. He came back here because he believed land could forgive. But fire did not forgive. The blaze had started in the dry season, pushed by a cruel wind. Caleb fought it alone, swinging a shovel with one arm until his body collapsed. When he woke up in the dirt, everything he owned was ash. Insurance refused to pay. The bank showed no mercy. Now he was a man with one arm, no farm, and a debt that grew every day like a shadow. At night, Caleb slept in a rented metal shed near the road. Rain tapped on the roof like quiet laughter. Sometimes he dreamed of his farm as it once was. Other times he dreamed of fire. On one such night, unable to sleep, Caleb opened his old tablet. The screen flickered, but it still worked. Messages from the bank blinked in red. He ignored them. Instead, he scrolled. He did not know what he was looking for. Maybe distraction. Maybe proof that the universe still moved. That was when he saw the ad. Interstellar marriage exchange. Companionship across species. Legal, voluntary, discreet. Caleb laughed softly to himself. What kind of alien would want this? He muttered. He looked down at his body. The empty sleeve pinned to his jacket, the dirt under his nails, the future that felt already finished. He closed the ad, then opened it again. The words were simple, no promises of love, no lies about perfection, just two lonely beings agreeing to face life together. Caleb felt something tighten in his chest. He remembered the nights after the accident when he learned to tie his boots with one hand. The way people stopped meeting his eyes, the silence that followed him everywhere. He was tired of silence. The application asked for basic information: name, species, physical condition. He hesitated at that last part. Then he typed one arm, permanent. He expected shame. Instead, he felt relief. At the end, there was a question. Why are you seeking companionship? Caleb stared at it for a long time. Finally, he wrote, because I lost everything except the will to stay. He sent the application. Days passed, then weeks. Caleb almost forgot about it as he tried to fix tools with one hand and stretch his last credits. One morning, a message arrived. Match found, arrival scheduled. His breath caught. The shuttle was due in 3 days. Caleb cleaned the shed as best he could. He borrowed a chair from a neighbor. He fixed his jacket and pinned the empty sleeve again, even though it made him feel exposed. On the day of arrival, he stood near the old landing pad by the road. The sky was wide and pale. His heart beat like it had something to lose again. The shuttle broke through the clouds with a low hum. As it descended, Caleb whispered to himself, "You can still leave." But he did not move. The ramp lowered. A tall alien woman stepped out, carrying a small case in both hands. Her skin was soft blue-gray, marked with faint lines that shimmered in the light. Her eyes were warm and steady. She looked at Caleb, not past him, not through him. At him. "My name is Lyra Vesh," she said gently. "I am here to be your wife." Caleb swallowed hard. In the middle of burned land and broken dreams, something new had just arrived. And he had no idea that this moment would save his world. Caleb's heart thumped as he watched Lyra step off the shuttle. She moved with quiet confidence, not afraid of the wind, the dust, or the burned land stretching around them. Most people who came to this farm saw ruin and turned away. Lyra did not. He noticed the small case in her hands. It looked ordinary, but she held it like it contained the whole universe. Her eyes were fixed on him, not the burned barn or the blackened fields, not even the crumbling fence. They were amber and calm, like she could see his pain and still not judge him. Caleb cleared his throat, unsure what to say. Welcome you, he stammered. His voice sounded rough, broken like the land. Lyra smiled faintly. Thank you, I am honored you chose me. He looked at her, really looked. She was tall, taller than most humans, and her shoulders were strong. Her skin was blue-gray, marked with faint patterns that glimmered when the sunlight hit them. She did not shy away from his missing arm. She did not flinch at the scar across his cheek. Most humans looked away. Most people left. Caleb's mouth opened to speak, then closed. What could he even say? He had nothing to offer her. Not a farm, not money, not a future. Just one arm, empty fields, and the smell of smoke lingering everywhere. The shuttle doors hissed and closed behind her. Lyra glanced at the ruined farmhouse and the black soil. "This is all gone," she said softly, not like a complaint, but like an observation. Caleb swallowed. "Yeah, that's about right." He wanted to tell her to leave, to turn back to the shuttle while it was still possible. He wanted to warn her that a life here would be hard, lonely, and full of struggle. But he could not bring himself to say it. The words stuck in his throat. Instead, they walked to his shed. It was little more than metal sheets patched together. The rain had come through again last night, leaving puddles on the dirt floor. Caleb waved for her to sit, and she did, folding her long legs neatly beneath her. For a long moment, neither spoke. Caleb watched her, feeling both nervous and amazed. Most humans would have screamed at the ruin, cried at the fire, or left. Lyra sat calmly, not pretending, not afraid. Finally, Caleb asked, "You don't mind?" His voice was low, unsure. She looked at him steadily. "Mind what?" This place, me, the fire, everything." Lyra's eyes softened. "I did not come for comfort, I came for truth," she said simply. Caleb blinked. Truth. He had not heard that word in years. People usually offered pity or advice. Lyra offered something stronger, honesty. The wind howled across the field, pushing ashes like ghosts in front of them. Caleb felt a shiver run down his spine. Lyra did not move. She did not flinch. She simply watched him, waiting for him to speak. "I don't know why you would agree to this," he said finally, voice cracking. "I have nothing." She smiled faintly. "Sometimes humans think they need something to deserve companionship. I do not. I came because I chose you." Caleb's chest tightened. A human or an alien he did not care had never said that to him before. Not in all the lonely years of one-arm labor, of whispered ridicule, of empty nights. He wanted to ask her 100 questions, but words failed him. Instead, he led her to the small shed that would be her temporary home. It was cramped, but it had a roof, and for the first time in months, Caleb felt hope. At night, they ate a simple meal together. Lyra asked about the fire. Caleb told her haltingly how he fought it alone. He expected her to turn away, to leave, to look disgusted at his failure, but she did not. She listened. She asked quiet questions. She remembered details. She cared. Afterward, Caleb lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about her. For the first time in years, he did not feel completely alone. A stranger had stepped into his ruined world and had not turned away. Instead, she had brought with her something he did not expect. Warmth, calm, and the sense that maybe, just maybe, life could begin again. Outside, the wind whispered across the blackened fields. Inside, a human with one arm and an alien bride sat together, and the possibility of tomorrow felt, for the first time, real. Caleb did not know what the future held, but he knew one thing: someone had chosen him even when he had nothing left to give. And that truth burned brighter than any fire that had taken his past. The neighbors noticed. It started with glances over fences. Then came quiet whispers that floated across the burned fields. Caleb heard them when he worked in the soil, sweat dripping from his brow. "She'll leave when she sees there's no money," one said. "She probably wants a visa, or citizenship," another muttered. "She's too calm. No one that calm is honest," a third added. Caleb tried to ignore them. He had ignored worse, but the words clung to him like smoke. They made the burned land feel even emptier, the wind feel colder. Lyra heard them too. She never replied. She simply continued her work, walking beside Caleb, learning the rhythms of a farm built from ash. She carried water to the shed, mended a torn tarp, swept the remains of charred soil from the paths. She did not need to speak to prove herself. Every small action spoke louder than words. Caleb watched her with awe and guilt. He wondered how she could be so patient, so quiet, and yet so strong. She had not flinched at the ruin. She had not recoiled at his missing arm. She had stepped into this life as if she belonged. And maybe he realized she did. One evening after the sun had disappeared behind smoky clouds, Caleb lost control. He slammed his fist, well, the one fist he had, onto the work table, startling Lyra. "You didn't sign up for this," he shouted. "I'm broken, this place is broken, and everyone says you should leave." Lyra looked at him, eyes calm, steady. She did not step back. She did not argue. Instead, she walked slowly to his side and placed her hands on the table. Her fingers were long and warm, and her presence seemed to fill the small shed. "In my world," she said softly, "we say broken ground grows the strongest roots." Caleb froze. He had never heard words like that before. He had spent his life fighting fire and loss, but no one had ever compared it to strength. I don't know what that means," he said, voice barely a whisper. "It means," she continued, "even if everything is destroyed, life can grow again, stronger, better if someone believes in it." Caleb looked at her, really looked and saw it. Not just her calm, not just her patience, but the kind of belief he had not felt since he was a boy planting seeds in the old fields. She believed, not in him as he was, but in what he could become. Days passed. Caleb noticed changes in himself. He no longer flinched at every whisper from the neighbors. He no longer felt the ache of failure so sharply. Lyra's quiet confidence had become a shield, and somehow he felt braver with one arm than he had with two. The townspeople continued to talk, of course. They always would. But Caleb stopped caring. He had someone who chose to stay, someone who chose him, and that was stronger than every doubt in the world. One morning, Lyra joined him in the burned fields. She knelt, touching the black soil with her fingers. "It is sad," she said, "but it can be healed, it can be good again." Caleb knelt beside her. For the first time, he imagined green fields where black soil lay. He imagined a house that was not ash. He imagined life again, and this time he believed it was possible. That night, Caleb sat on the porch of the little shed, watching Lyra move among the tools as if she owned the world. He thought about the whispers, the doubts, the neighbors' cruel words, and he realized something. None of that mattered anymore. Because she had chosen him. Because she stayed. Because she believed when he could not. And for the first time in years, Caleb did not feel broken. He felt whole in a way that had nothing to do with arms or walls or money. He felt human. The stars rose over the blackened land. The wind carried the last echoes of whispers into the night. But inside the shed, one human and one alien bride sat together. And in the quiet, something stronger than fire was growing, hope. Weeks passed, and Caleb and Lyra settled into a fragile rhythm. She learned quickly how to manage chores, repair fences, even mend the small machines Caleb used with one hand. The farm, though burned and bare, slowly became a place that felt alive again. Yet, despite her quiet diligence, a shadow of worry lingered in Caleb's chest. He could feel it growing stronger each day, like a storm waiting to break. One afternoon, Caleb returned from repairing a water pump, his shirt soaked in sweat. He dropped onto a chair, running a hand through his short hair. "I don't know how long we can keep this going," he muttered, almost to himself. "The bank's coming again, 30 days until they take what's left, if there's anything left." Lyra had been tending a small plot near the shed. She walked over, her steps soft on the dirt. She set down her case, the small, unassuming one she had carried since she arrived, and opened it carefully. Caleb frowned. He had never seen her touch it like this before, never knew what it held. "This is my dowry," she said, placing the case on the table. Caleb blinked. "Dowry? I don't understand. I didn't marry you for money. I didn't even expect." He trailed off, words failing him. She met his eyes calmly. "I did not tell you before because I wanted your choice to be real, not influenced by wealth or obligation. I wanted you to see me, not my fortune." Her hands opened the case. Inside was a small crystal disc glowing faintly. Caleb leaned closer. He touched it hesitantly, and numbers began to swirl into the air, credits, trade numbers, assets beyond what he could imagine. Enough money to buy the entire burned land and much more. I can't, he said, shaking his head. This isn't fair. I didn't marry you for this. I know, she said softly. That is why I offer it freely. You could refuse it, but you will not refuse what we will build together. Caleb sank into his chair, his mind spinning. He thought of the nights spent staring at the black soil, of the fire that had stolen everything, of the cold wind in the shed. For the first time, he felt tears welling not from loss, but from relief. Relief and something deeper, love, trust, and awe at the woman who stood before him. Why, he whispered, why would you trust me with this? Lyra's eyes softened. Because you are human, and humans, even when broken, have a way of rebuilding worlds. I have seen your heart. That is worth more than any fortune. Caleb could not speak. He stared at her, feeling a warmth he had not known in years. She did not need him to have a farm, a house, or even a future. She only needed him. For hours they sat in silence, the disk glowing softly between them. Outside, the wind rattled the shed's roof, but inside, nothing could touch them. Caleb finally understood what she meant when she spoke of truth. She had chosen him without expectation. She had stayed when the world would have told her to leave. She had brought hope into his life in a form he had never imagined. That night, Caleb lay awake on the small cot in the shed, staring at the ceiling. He thought about the fire, the debts, the lost crops, the blackened fields. And then he thought about Lyra, calm, strong, patient, and full of quiet power. He realized something he had never dared to believe. He could start again, not alone. Not as a broken man, but as someone who had been chosen, who had been seen, who had been loved for his soul, not his strength. Outside, the stars shone over the burned land. For the first time, the soil felt like it could grow again. Caleb smiled, finally understanding that some fires do not destroy, they forge. And Lyra, with her quiet strength and secret fortune, was the spark that could rebuild everything. In that small shed, in the middle of ruined fields, a human with one arm and an alien woman with a mysterious past began to dream, not of what had been lost, but of what they could create together. The farm was still ashes, but hope had arrived, and hope, Caleb realized, could grow faster than fire ever burned. The work began at sunrise. Caleb stood in the fields, one arm wrapped with a leather strap to protect the stump, sweat glistening on his forehead. Lyra moved beside him, carrying water, tools, and seeds with ease. Her alien strength made tasks faster, but she never rushed him. She waited when he struggled, offering a hand only when he asked. The burned soil was stubborn. Blackened, dry, and brittle, it resisted every shovel and hoe. Caleb cursed quietly, feeling the weight of failure pressing on his chest. Yet when he looked at Lyra, kneeling to test the earth with her fingers, he felt calm. She did not complain. She did not scold. She only studied the soil and whispered softly, "It can be healed. It wants to live." Together, they laid new soil over the blackened earth. They planted seeds, small and fragile, with hope as their water. Caleb taught Lyra the ways of a human farm, how to read the sun, the wind, and the clouds. In return, Lyra taught him to sense the soil in ways he never had before, to listen to it, feel it, and give it what it needed. The neighbors watched from their fences. Some shook their heads, some whispered. But slowly, curiosity turned into admiration. One old farmer who had mocked Caleb for years finally nodded. "I didn't think it could be done," he said. "But you might just do it." Caleb smiled faintly, his heart lighter than it had been in months. He realized something important. This was not just about money or land. This was about rebuilding not only the farm but his life. Lyra had shown him that even when everything burns, it is possible to grow again. Days turned into weeks. The farmhouse, once reduced to ash, rose stronger and simpler, built with sweat, stone, and determination. The barn followed, sturdy and practical. Water lines were repaired. Fences were mended. Every nail hammered, every plank lifted was a victory against the fire that had stolen so much. At night they sat together on the porch, exhausted but alive. Caleb poured water into a small cup for them both. He glanced at Lyra and saw her watching the stars, serene and unafraid. "I can't believe you stayed," he whispered. Lyra turned her head, her amber eyes soft in the moonlight. "I told you I came for truth, not comfort. You deserved someone who saw your heart, not your losses. Caleb felt a lump in his throat. He had never heard words like that directed at him. Most people saw a broken man with one arm and burned fields. Lyra saw him. She saw the man who had never given up, who fought even when the world told him he could not. When the first sprouts appeared in the fields, tender green against the dark earth, Caleb could barely contain his emotion. He knelt, his one hand brushing the young leaves. Lyra knelt beside him, her fingers tracing the same fragile growth. They smiled at each other, a quiet joy that spoke louder than words. The whispers from the neighbors had not disappeared, but they no longer cut like knives. People came to help, to offer advice, to lend tools. Some brought seeds, some brought meals. The burned farm was slowly becoming a community again, a place of life instead of loss. For Caleb, each day became a lesson in patience and hope. Each night he learned more about Lyra, not just her strength, but her wisdom, her calm, and her unwavering belief that even the most ruined soil could bloom. Together they laughed, sweated, and dreamed. And with each sunrise, the farm grew, not just in plants, but in life, in love, and in the quiet, unstoppable human spirit that refused to be defeated. The fire had taken much, but it had not taken their courage. And in that courage, Caleb finally saw something he thought he would never feel again, the beauty of starting over. By the end of the week, as the sun dipped behind the horizon, Caleb stood in the middle of the fields. The green sprouts swayed gently in the wind. Lyra stood beside him, smiling. He realized for the first time since the fire that his world was not over. It was beginning again. And this time he was not alone. Life on the farm was finally settling into a rhythm. Green shoots grew steadily where black ash had once ruled, and Caleb began to believe in tomorrow again. Lyra moved through the fields with quiet confidence, her presence calm but commanding. Together, they had rebuilt more than soil and fences. They had rebuilt trust, hope, and a future. But the universe rarely leaves humans and aliens untested. One morning, sleek corporate shuttles descended onto the farmland. Men in sharp suits stepped out, carrying legal documents and devices that scanned the property with cold precision. They claimed that Lyra's fortune violated trade laws, that the money used to rebuild the farm was legally tied to interstellar trade, and that everything, including the marriage, could be taken from them. Caleb felt his chest tighten. His one arm trembled slightly, not from weakness but from anger and fear. He had fought fires, debt, and despair, but this felt different. These people did not care about sweat, heart, or hard work. They cared only about rules and credits. "Stay calm," Lyra whispered, placing a hand on his shoulder. Her touch was firm, grounding. "They threaten, but they cannot touch what we have built." Caleb shook his head. "They can take it all, the land, the crops, even you they can." Lyra's amber eyes met his, steady and unwavering. "I will not allow it," she said. "And if they try, I will face them. Together, we are stronger than any law that seeks to divide us." The agents demanded signatures, documents, and surrender. They spoke in cold, sharp tones, expecting Caleb to back down. He felt panic clawing at him, but Lyra's calm strength spread through him like fire and water combined, burning fear, washing courage. "This farm is mine," Caleb said, his voice louder than he expected. "And she is my wife. You will not take either of us." The agents hesitated. They were prepared to deal with a human, but not a human paired with an alien bride who understood trade, law, and power far better than they did. Lyra stepped forward. Her small case opened again, and numbers floated into the air, clear proof of her legal control over the assets used to rebuild the farm. The agent's devices registered it. There was no loophole, no weakness. "My fortune is legal," Lyra said calmly. "But even if it were not, I would give it up before I give up this life." The agents glanced at one another, their confidence faltering. They had not expected resistance from both a human and an alien who thought strategically, who fought calmly, and who refused to be intimidated. Slowly, they retreated, leaving Caleb and Lyra standing in the middle of the green field, the young sprouts swaying in the gentle wind. Caleb sank to his knees in relief, exhausted from tension he didn't even realize he had been holding. Lyra knelt beside him, smiling softly. "You see," she whispered, "strength is not only in muscle or money. Strength is in courage and in choosing what matters." Caleb shook his head, a tear rolling down his cheek. You saved everything, he said, his voice breaking. No, she replied, brushing ash from his sleeve. You saved everything, I only gave you a choice. They stayed in the field for a long while, listening to the wind and the rustle of new growth. Caleb realized that life could be threatened, rules could be twisted, and greed could arrive at any door. But none of it mattered when someone believed in you enough to stand beside you. That night they sat on the porch of the rebuilt farmhouse, the stars bright and steady above them. Caleb poured water into 2 cups, his hands steady now. He thought of everything they had endured, the fire, the burned fields, the whispers, the threats. And he realized something profound. Survival was not only about rebuilding farms or fighting banks. Survival was about connection, trust, and love. I don't think I could have done any of this without you, he said, voice low and full of gratitude. You did it, Lyra said softly. I only reminded you who you already were. Humans are stubborn creatures, Caleb. They fight, they build, they endure. That is why you are still here. Caleb looked at her, the woman who had come into his life as a stranger who had stayed through ashes and fear, and he knew she was right. Together they could face anything. Laws, fire, debt, or whispers, it did not matter. They had chosen each other. And sometimes he realized that choice was stronger than any fortune, any weapon, or any law in the galaxy. Outside, the wind moved over the fields, gentle and free. Inside, Caleb and Lyra shared quiet laughter and the knowledge that no force could take what they had built. Together, with courage, love, and unwavering faith in each other, years passed and the farm had grown into more than a home. It became a sanctuary. The burned soil had turned dark and rich under the care of Caleb and Lyra. Green fields stretched farther than the eye could see, dotted with crops swaying in the wind. The farmhouse stood solid and warm, welcoming anyone who needed shelter, food, or hope. Caleb worked the land with one hand, his movements skilled and precise. He taught others how to adapt, how to use what they had, how to fight despair when it threatened to take hold. Veterans, travelers, and aliens who had lost homes or families arrived, and he showed them that determination could build a world from nothing. Lyra moved among them, guiding, teaching, and sharing her knowledge of trade and law. Together, they had built a community, a place where kindness and courage grew stronger than fear. One morning, Caleb paused in the middle of a field, wiping sweat from his brow. He looked at the young sprouts beneath the sun, their fragile leaves reaching for life. Lyra joined him, her fingers brushing the same green shoots. Look at them, she said softly. From ashes they rise. Caleb nodded, a lump forming in his throat. Just like us, he said. We started with nothing, just hope and each other. They walked toward the farmhouse, watching as new arrivals worked alongside them. Children laughed, chasing chickens across the yard. Neighbors, once doubtful, now helped with planting and repairs. Even the old farmer who had mocked Caleb years ago gave a small, proud nod. The whispers that once carried doubt had vanished, replaced by admiration and respect. At night, Caleb and Lyra sat on the porch, staring at the stars. The universe seemed vast and quiet, but here on this small planet they had created something extraordinary. Caleb thought of the fire, the lost crops, the cold nights in the shed. He thought of the fear he had carried when corporate agents came to threaten them, and he realized that none of it mattered now. Do you ever regret it? He asked Lyra, his voice gentle. She shook her head, smiling faintly. I could have chosen a life of wealth, comfort, and safety, but I would have never found this purpose, this love. I would have missed you. Caleb took her hand, feeling its warmth, its strength. You saved me, he said. Not just the farm, me. You showed me what humans can do, even with one hand, even when everything seems lost. Lyra leaned her head on his shoulder. No, Caleb, you saved yourself. I only walked with you. He smiled, realizing she was right. He had rebuilt his life, his land, and his hope because he refused to give up. She had given him a choice, a companion, and her belief, but the strength had always been his. Humans survived not because they were perfect or strong or lucky. They survived because they chose to keep going, to build, to care, and to fight for something greater than themselves. The wind moved across the fields, carrying the scent of fresh soil and growing crops. Somewhere in the distance, a child laughed, chasing a chicken, a symbol of life and joy. Caleb watched, breathing deeply. The farm was no longer burned. It was alive, vibrant, and full of promise. He thought of the future, of seasons to come, of new arrivals, of the hands that would join theirs in planting, harvesting, and rebuilding. He realized that this was the true power of humanity. Even in the face of fire, loss, and despair, humans could create worlds with one hand, one heart, and a choice to endure. Caleb looked at Lyra, his partner, his companion, his friend, his love. "We did it," he whispered. "Yes," she said, smiling, "together." Under alien stars and human hands, a burned-down farm had become a home, a refuge, and a symbol. A human with one arm and an alien woman with a secret fortune had proven that hope, courage, and love could rebuild anything, even the world itself. And for Caleb, that truth was more powerful than any fire, any fortune, or any obstacle. Humans survived because they chose to, because they built, because they believed. And sometimes, just sometimes, that was enough to change the universe.